Hello and welcome to the first real comparison between the Note 20 Ultra and the S20 Ultra. I have them here side by side, so let's see how they compare out there in the real world. Right off the gate, you can see the S20 Ultra has much more saturation. Let's take a photo on both. Turns out the contrast and saturation are about the same, so the difference I was seeing was a result of the screen on both devices and not the camera. Watching the photos on the same screen, you can see the S20 clearly has a much warmer tone, causing the green to shift to yellow and the sky has some orange tint to it, while the Note 20 has a more natural color where the green stays green and the sky stays blue. The ultra wide is the same story. The S20 gives a warmer tone while the Note 20 is much cooler in comparison. And that's the only difference you'll see because they are using the same cameras. Only the telephoto camera is different, with the S20 having 4x optical zoom and the Note 20 having 5x optical zoom, with a wider aperture of 3.0 instead of 3.5, so it lets in more light, and it has bigger pixels, so it should capture even more light. Overall, it should be an upgrade, so let's see how they compare. Trees are a great way to test cameras because that's usually where the quality falls apart completely. And you can see here the S20 over sharpening just ruining the photo, while the Note 20 just looks miles better. The Note 20 simply has much more quality, so it doesn't need to fake it by adding sharpness. And as you zoom, you can see the S20 loses all the detail in the leaves. It just looks so mushy, with the Note 20 still preserving a lot of detail in comparison. Moving on to 20 times zoom, the S20 is already becoming unusable, while the Note 20 is still barely passable. At 50x, looks like the tables turn. It is now the Note 20 who seems to have much more over-sharpening, while the S20 feels more natural. But still, 50x is really pushing it. None of them look good. Just a couple more samples from the telephoto. At 5x again, you can see it's not even close. The S20 oversharps everything, and this is outside in a sunny day. Here's a super crop of the same photo. That dark edge on everything is a sharpening filter. The Note 20 has none of that. It just gives you a clean, natural image. And if you notice, the S20 is really not nailing the focus. Here's another photo at 10x, and it's the same story. The S20 photo is oversharpened and blurry. The Note 20 is fine. Moving on to a new location, this is the ultra-wide lens. You can see the S20 has the sky blown out and a much bigger lens flare, but maybe it's because it's sitting higher on my rig, and as the sun was shining through the leaves, it would hit one of them with more intensity, because in the next photo, it's a Note 20 who has the bigger flare. You can see they are basically the same in terms of image quality and color. The S20 still has warmer tones, but in this example, it's not very noticeable. The big difference is really on the telephoto lens, with the Note 20 clearly coming out on top. The S20 just has terrible over-sharpening overall. Only at 50x is where the Note has more sharpening. You probably noticed by now that the Note 20 maxes out at 50x and the S20 at 100x. So here's a photo taken with the S20 at 100, and this is a photo taken at 50x scaled twice on the Note. Again, I feel the S20 looks better with less sharpening, but still, if you take a step back, the quality is awful on both. Apart from the different telephoto camera, Samsung replaced the depth sensor on the S20 with a laser autofocus. So how does that affect portrait mode, now that the Note doesn't have a depth sensor? If you watched my S20 camera review, you know the answer. The phone doesn't use the depth sensor for portrait mode. In fact, I feel like it didn't use it for anything apart from 3D scanning, and that's why Samsung got rid of it. Portrait mode is 100% software, and it works the same with the rear camera or the front camera. And it works very well. It makes a perfect separation between the subject and the background, with a bunch of cool effects you can select and adjust the intensity. And I think the best part is that you can go back to the photo and change them. It saves like a, let's call it RAW file, that allows you to go back to this menu again and swap between the settings as much as you want. So it's pretty cool. It works exactly the same on both phones, and it lets you use the main camera or the telephoto if you want more background compression. You can use this mode in video too with more cool effects, creating a perfect background separation. It's a cool mode to fake shallow depth of field and make it look like you're shooting in a camera with a bigger sensor. Although the quality takes a hit as this is limited to 1080p at 25 frames per second. But anyway, it's a cool mode, no difference at all between the phones. Video is just the same story as photos, they're the same cameras. Only the telephoto should have a difference, but in video mode it's very small, they're basically the same. Just looking at both screens, there doesn't seem to be much difference. This is the ultra wide camera on both. Again. They both looks good. And now turning on the zoom. And yeah, the S20 shakes so much. So I put the S20 on the support that the Note was using, and yep, it looks, the problem is from the Magic arm I'm using. In video, they are really very similar. In a straight side by side, it's hard to tell a difference. Only really the warmer tones come out as the only difference. This is now the ultra wide. This is all handheld, by the way, and just handheld. The optical stabilization is doing an amazing job. It's up to the main. This is the super steady. All handheld. Running. Again, no difference. When you use super steady, the quality drops a lot. Dynamic range goes down and the colors look awful. I think just the optical stabilization is good enough. Let's try slow motion. Super slow motion gives you a really low 720p file but records at 420 fps. The phone frame blends to 960 fps to look more impressive, but it's actually 420. As you can see, the quality is not very good. Slow motion shoots 240 fps continuously with sound in 1080p. You can see the S20 failed focus. What a surprise. The quality is a bit better, but not much. Both phones perform very similarly. But the big difference is that the Note 20 can record 120 fps in Pro mode. And it will play back in 120 fps. Which is nice because the Note 20 Ultra has a 120Hz display, so you can enjoy high frame rate videos on your high refresh rate display. Or you can slow it down in editing to the frame rate you are working in and get a much higher quality slow motion than the other modes. Speaking of Pro mode, the Note 20 comes with a bunch of new stuff. Now in Pro mode you can control the audio. You can control the gain up to 12 and minus 12 dBs. You have the audio meters here on the right, and you can control which mic you are using. Right now I'm using every mic. It's the omnidirectional mic. So let's test right now. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm talking right behind the phone, and I'm going to move to the front. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It should sound basically the same all around. And now let's move just the wait. I'm using the front microphone, so the one right now, the behind microphone, and moving to the front, it should sound much worse. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And now let's swap. Let's change to the front microphone, or in this case the back. So now I'm behind the phone. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And if I move, the sound quality should still be super bad. So now I'm going to use the USB mic. You should hear very well, because now I'm using the Rode Wireless Go, and it has a pretty good range. So no matter where I go, you should hear me pretty well. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's the different mic modes, but this is nothing new. All the other phones do this already. If you just plug in the microphone, it will record automatically using the microphone. So the only thing new here is being able to pick the front or the back microphone. Apart from this, you have new recording modes. You can now record in 24 FPS in addition to 30 and 60, and of course the 120 I told you already. You can also shoot in 21:9. It doesn't give you a wider field of view, it just crops the top and bottom to give you a 21:9 file. If you drag these icons, you can access to 2 more options: color profile and zoom. But it's digital zoom. You can only use the main camera in Pro mode. The color profile only works in 1080p at 30 FPS and below. You now have an histogram and sound meter, and the rest is the same. 2 very similar phones with one big difference: laser autofocus. When the S20 Ultra was released, it simply didn't focus, like at all. It would keep hunting for focus forever until you tap the screen. After countless updates, it got much better, but not even close to the Note 20. You see, just judging the photos side by side doesn't really tell the whole picture. The problem with the S20 was never picture quality, but autofocus. Countless times I tried to take a photo or a video and it came out completely blurred. It was especially awful on video because you'll just see the focus going back and forth non-stop. It's really not the performance you would expect from a phone that launched at $1,500. It's much better now, at least it works. Even though it's slow and just snaps into place, it works. The Note 20 is much better in terms of autofocus, and for that reason alone, it wins over the S20. Picture quality doesn't matter anything if 80% of the photos will be blurry. You can see here how much smoother the Note 20 is, and how the S20 is much slower and just snaps into focus. It's not subtle at all, it's a really noticeable crank. And to me, it just ruins every video you take. A good autofocus is smooth, you don't ever notice it. A bad autofocus makes these sudden jumps, and in the telephoto camera, it's much worse. You can see the S20 just refused to focus. It goes back and forth and fails, while the Note 20 has no problems at all, even in low light situations. Try to take a photo at the Samsung store, and it just refuses to focus. Using the S20 Ultra is so frustrating because you can't even use manual focus on the telephoto lens. You're just stuck with this crap. It's hopeless and useless. I pre-ordered the S20 Ultra and have been using it ever since. But after using the Note 20 Ultra for about a week, I can tell you the difference is not even close. It may look close if you just look at the photos side by side in a vacuum, but when you account for the usability, the ease of use, the confidence that the autofocus will not mess up, then the Note 20 Ultra wins by a landslide. I hope you found this video useful. As always, thank you for watching and have a great day.